What's up, internet? It's Kick Blake again. Today is Sunday, the day after my first 3-gun match, which was a success. And as promised, this is part 2 of a beginner's video. Just want to talk about what worked and what didn't. Made a couple notes so I don't forget anything. For instance, in the first video, I forgot to talk about the fact that they required and I purchased chamber flags, which ended up being important because they used them on every single stage for the rifle and the shotgun that I borrowed. So let's get into this talk. Alright, so the first thing I wrote down is, and this is kind of the biggest fail of the day, is magazines. I had plenty of rifle magazines. I've got P-mags coming out my ears. I think I brought 4 of them. 4 30 rounders plus a 20 rounder because on the organization's website it said you might want to bring a 20 rounder in case you have to go prone on a long stage, which we didn't get to do because it's Houston and the long stage happened to still be a swamp. Although, to be perfectly honest, there were some swampy sections elsewhere at this range as well. So I had plenty of rifle magazines. Shotgun, obviously, I was doing a 2-fed shotgun, so that wasn't an issue. And thankfully, somebody did lend me a shell caddy, which I will post a link to the one that I was lent to. It basically just clips around your chest. Everybody calls it the suicide bomber rack. It worked great. In fact, I'll probably pick up that one as my first piece, because parts because I don't know any better, parts because it worked just fine, and you don't have to carry around the whole time. You just use it on the stages where shotgun is part of the stage. And yesterday for me there was only one stage that had shotgun. Anyway, magazines, pistol magazines. I only had the 2 that my pistol came with. In the USPSA matches I've done, they've been beginner matches, and I don't know if this is true of all of them, but maximum 10 rounds per magazine in the matches, maximum 20 rounds per stage. So my 2 15-round magazines have been to this point fine for the limited amount of competition I've done. For 3-gun, that's not anywhere near enough. There was one stage that was pistol only, and not only did it have approximately 20 targets, which you're going to want to double tap, excuse me. So that's 40 rounds right there, and I only had 30. But there were also pistol targets at 35 yards that you wanted to double tap, as well as hanging clays that you had to shoot, and my pistol game is not enough to get those with one shot. So there was a stage where I didn't engage half the targets simply because I only had 30 rounds of pistol and it wasn't nearly enough. So if you're going to go out and try to be prepared as best you can for your first 3-gun match, I would say at least 4 rifle magazines, maybe 5, so 4 on your belt, and then 1 that you can use staging the gun if you need to, and at least the same for pistol, maybe 6, simply because the pistol magazines may only hold, I think 3-gun rule is 140 millimeter magazine length, which works out to about 22 rounds of 9mm in a double stack magazine. So if you get 4, that gets you to 88. If you get you 5, that gets you to 96. One of the guys I went shooting with said he had done it at a larger match, a stage that he ran out of ammo when he brought 96 to the line to start, which is pretty incredible and far different than what I've experienced in USPSA. So definitely get more pistol magazines, and you might want to, I just start with getting 5 or 6 of the standard, 15 to 17 round capacity magazines you can for your pistol. And then maybe you might want to consider getting the extended capacity base plates too. And that's kind of what I'm going to do. The base plate, the magazines for my pistol, a Walther PPQ, aren't exactly cheap because unlike the Glocks, there's not a bunch of aftermarket manufacturers. And then the extended capacity base plates tend to be pretty expensive too. So I'll be slowly piecing that together. All right, now on to, I guess, the second biggest fail of the day, which was my red dot. Previously, I had only ever turned it up to brightness level 3 to shoot with, and I normally, when I take it to the range, it's the 100-yard lanes are covered, like shaded, and I'm wearing clear shooting glasses. So yesterday I'm out in an area that's not covered, and I was wearing basically sunglasses, shooting glasses, and in my first stage I set the red dot to 3. I kind of looked at it from a long way away as I was setting it down into the grounding station, and I couldn't see it. I just assumed it was on because it was on rank 3, and then proceeded to miss every single target on my first stage because I couldn't see the dots when I finally got the gun up, and I just foolishly thought I could just point shoot and didn't bother to try to fix it while the timer was running. So I guess that the double fail is check before you make the gun hot, before you insert a magazine into the gun, to make sure you can see your red dot. If I had just done that instead of assuming that it was fine, then the stage would have been a success because it wasn't a terribly difficult stage. That, and it's far better to put the gun on safe in the middle of the stage and fix it if you can, than just to say, oh well, I'm going to point shoot. It did not work, and luckily it was just the fact that I needed to crank it up. I put it on for the rest of the stages. I put it on 7, which is the maximum brightness in my red dot, and it ran fine. And in fact, the very next stage for me, I think it was the very next stage, had two targets at 80 yards that you had to engage from 3 different positions on a barricade, and all my shots were hits. So the red dot was fine. I just needed it to actually function. So check all of your equipment at the starting line to make sure everything's working like you're expecting it to. And if something fails, and this will be tough when you're on the clock, fix it, because the penalty for 20 or 30 seconds for, in my case, fixing your red dot so I can see the damn thing is far better than literally missing 10 rifle targets. On to water. Maybe if you're out in the winter this doesn't apply to you, but I'm in South Texas. It's hot. I brought a lot of water. I drank a lot of water, and it wasn't nearly enough. And I woke up this morning with a headache. The guy that took me to the event told me 2 things, and I'll pass this on because it ends up being true. Bring more ammo than you can shoot, and bring more water than you can drink. So that ended up being pretty important, because there's not a lot of downtime. In all honesty, these stages tend to be fairly short. You're not getting to sit a lot then while everybody else is shooting, because when you're not shooting, you're either loading magazines or you're out resetting the stages. So you're on your feet in the sun for a 5-stage event. You call it 5 or 6 hours. You will sweat. You need to be drinking even if you don't feel like you're thirsty. Chamber flags I already mentioned. We use them. They're cheap. Get them. that's really all there's to say about that, I guess. Okay, on to the GoPro. I'll roll in some footage here. All the footage I got was of my first fail stage. The reason being that I tried to use this guy. It's just this big clip and clip it to the bill of my hat, and that sucked. To be perfectly honest, it pulled down on the hat, and after that I was like, I just decided that I'm not going to run this that way again. They make like a elastic thing that goes over the top of the hat. That might have been a better option. I thought I had one. I couldn't find it, so I didn't bring it. I have one that mounts on the chest, but to be perfectly honest, most of the videos I've seen of people running the chest rig for 3-gun, the rifle blocks half of the view, so you can't really see anything. So I really wanted to get it up. I actually do have a Picatinny rail mount GoPro mount too, but that's on another rifle, my hog rifle, so I didn't pull it off for this. I didn't have any free rail space anyway because of that 9-inch handguard, so maybe that'll come off. But if you're gonna run a GoPro, I suggest the little elastic hat mount, or maybe something on the gun, but don't clip it to your bill. That sucked. But it is interesting to watch the footage, so hopefully you get a good laugh out of me in here missing everything. Lastly, I'll talk about the wagon. There's a lot of crap you're carting around from stage to stage, so the wagon was clutch. And so I carried the pistol on my belt, but it was the rifle and all the ammo and all my water in the wagon, and it made it a lot easier than trying to like pick up and put down a backpack, or yard sale at every stage and then have to gather everything back up. It was all in one place. The wagon, or if you want to go ahead and get one of the strollers that everybody uses with the racks on it, that is worth the investment if you think you're going to do any kind of shooting sport. And if you have kids, it's great too. The collapsible one I have is awesome because I can fold it in half and toss it in the truck bed. It doesn't take up a ton of space. And then, if I need it for my kid or my shooting, I have it there. So that's all I have written down. Honestly, some other observations. I have only previously shot break action trap shotguns, and so my buddy lent me a Benelli 1301, I believe, and it was way softer shooting than I expected. I expected that thing to beat up my shoulder and make the rest of my day miserable, or if there was going to be a ton of shotgun that I just have to tap out. And it was incredibly soft. I had no problems with it. Other things I didn't think about but learned, shotgun barrels get really hot. So it turned out that my buddy used the same shotgun I did, and then there was a second new shooter, so a third person using the same shotgun, and that barrel gets stupid hot, and I mistakenly tried to touch it to try to turn it over to do some double loads, and it was, I burned my fingers a little bit. No big deal. Lesson learned there. So on that note, loading doubles with a properly opened loading port was kind of cool and not that hard. I was surprised. I thought, I literally practiced 2 or 3 times prior to the one shotgun stage I had to do, and then was able to successfully do 2 or 3 of them. I think I fumbled 1 or 2 more during the stage where I had to shoot shotgun. What else? What other observations? A lot of guys run big brakes on the front ends of their rifle to get the faster double tap. I noticed that. And I talk about big brakes. Surprisingly, the thing that I sucked the worst at was the thing that I had done the most of, which was the pistol stuff. I don't know if it's just the fact that I've only shot beginner USPSA matches, but the targets at this 3-gun match were smaller and at further distances than I had ever experienced at a USPSA match. And so, as I'm sure you saw in the GoPro footage I took, that I missed a lot. And Most of my stages actually had even smaller targets than the ones you see in the footage, and sometimes even at further distances. And so I struggled on the one thing I thought was going to be my saving grace. The rifle stuff was pretty easy. Like I said, red dot at 80 yards was absolutely no problem. Red dot any closer, same thing. You end up learning a lot, and I'm hoping this is the same with any events that you might go to, but people were very nice, very helpful, and willing to lend you damn near everything. Like the shotgun caddy I had, some guy was just like, here, wear this. You can run my shotgun too if you want. Do you want to try a stage with this, this race gun that he had? I mean, people were just willing to lend a hand and try to bring you to the sport. And I was pretty surprised at how kind of user run the event was. There wasn't a lot of distinction. I mean, it was between the shooters and the organizers. Like everybody traded off jobs to the best of their ability. Obviously, I couldn't run a timer because I didn't know what I was doing, and I couldn't score also because I didn't know what I was doing. But the guys that could, excuse me, they all switched off round after round. So that's pretty cool. It means it's going to be easy to get involved into, if you decide you want to make this a pretty serious hobby. And I guess the last thing I'll say is, if you're going to make this a pretty serious hobby, your best investment is going to be practice. The guys that beat me didn't beat me because they had $3,000 pistols. Their reloads were fractionally faster. What made the difference is just practice. And I can say that you kind of got to go out there and do that type of stuff to practice for that type of stuff. I'm not, other than sighting in your guns and working on consistent trigger pull, there is a whole part of 3-gun that you can't really practice on a static range. You got to be moving, you got to be under the pressure of the clock and stuff like that, because that's where the mistakes really start to come out. So I'll conclude by saying the same thing I said in the last video, is you just got to get out there and do it. It is quite a bit of fun. Yeah, so go do it. If you have any questions, comment below, like and subscribe if you like this kind of footage, this kind of material. I'll post more as I start to do more 3-gun stuff. And now I'm going to turn the camera off. I am going to edit this video, and then I'm going to get online and probably buy myself some more pistol magazines and some extended base planes. So this is Kick Blake. Thanks for watching.